Have you ever met someone who seems cold, distant, as if living behind an invisible wall? What many don't realize is that this coldness is rarely a lack of love, it's fear disguised as survival. Carl Jung revealed that unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It hides in the shadows of the psyche and transforms into behavior. But what if this emotional armor, created to protect, ended up becoming a prison? Some people aren't hard to love. They've just learned that love can be dangerous. Every restrained gesture, every calculated silence is the echo of an old wound crying out to be seen. Jung taught that pain is the currency of the soul, to purchase consciousness. But how many of us, instead of paying that price, prefer to carry the dead weight of the past as if it were our only identity? What would happen if you stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started questioning, "What hurt me so deeply?" True healing doesn't lie in tearing down the mask, but in acknowledging it. Because behind it, there isn't a broken heart, but one still secretly hoping to be found. Defense mechanisms and emotional survival. The human heart is a master of disguise. When pain is too great to be felt, the mind creates silent strategies, like a soldier who, even after the war, continues to protect himself from enemies that no longer exist. Distrust, isolation, excessive rationalization. None of these behaviors arise by chance. They are signs of an internal alarm system, still triggered by memories the body hasn't forgotten. Some people live as if constantly in defense mode, analyzing every word, every look, as if the world were a minefield. It's not paranoia. It's the echo of a wound that never healed. What we call coldness or difficulty trusting is often just instinct screaming, "Don't let me be hurt again." The emotional armor that once saved the soul eventually becomes a second skin, heavy, rigid, yet familiar. But what if you could see these defenses not as flaws, but as signs of deep emotional intelligence? The first step toward healing isn't abandoning protection, but understanding it, because only when we recognize the purpose of our pain can we slowly choose to let go of what no longer serves us. True courage isn't ignoring fear, but listening to it, and then deciding it no longer needs to dictate your every step. Psychological complexes, the invisible wounds. There are pains that don't bleed, but still control us. Jung called these hidden marks, complexes, emotional islands living within us, dictating reactions we don't always understand. A simple tone of voice, an ambiguous gesture, and suddenly you find yourself reacting with an intensity that feels out of place. It's not an overreaction. It's the past speaking through the present. These complexes act like psychic alarms. Someone who was abandoned might interpret a simple delay as proof of rejection. Someone who was humiliated might hear criticism where there are only neutral observations. The body reacts first. Reason arrives later, confused. These are automatic responses etched into cellular memory like soundtracks from old films that keep playing without our permission. But there is a key to freeing yourself from these patterns: awareness without judgment. When you realize that an intense reaction isn't about now, but about something much older, you gain the power to choose differently. Complexes don't disappear, but they lose control when illuminated by understanding. They become less the authors of your story and more parts of a journey you are learning to narrate with new words. The persona and the false self. We all wear social masks, but for those who have suffered deeply, this persona can become a steel prison. It's no longer about adaptation. It becomes a matter of survival. The child who heard "don't cry" grows into the adult who doesn't know how to ask for help. The rejected one who learned to be so self-sufficient that they smother their own desire for connection. These masks start as protection, but over time, stick to the skin. The cruelest part is that the world often rewards this false self. They call strong the one who swallows their tears, independent the one who denies their need for affection. But behind this admirable facade lives a peculiar loneliness, the anguish of being loved for the character, never for the person. The persona works until the day the soul, tired of living backstage, begins to whisper uncomfortable questions. Who would I be if I didn't have to be so strong? True freedom begins when we realize that the masks have already served their purpose. They protected us when we were fragile, but now they keep us from fully living. It's not about destroying them, but about recognizing that we are bigger than any disguise. The authentic self is not the one who never felt fear, but the one who dares to show themselves even while afraid. That is the courage that transforms survival into true existence. Excessive empathy and projection. There's a kind of love that doesn't free but imprisons, the one born from unhealed pain. Have you ever found yourself absorbing someone else's suffering as if it were your own? Felt an uncontrollable urge to fix others' lives while your own waits in the background? This super empathy often hides an uncomfortable truth. We are trying to heal in strangers the wounds we dare not touch in ourselves. Jung called this phenomenon projection, a clever mechanism of the psyche that turns close people into mirrors of our unresolved pain. The tireless caregiver, the eternal listener, the professional peacemaker. All these noble roles can be disguises to avoid meeting our own shadow. We give to others exactly what we deny ourselves: attention, understanding, forgiveness. But true compassion begins when we recognize this game of mirrors. It's not about stopping helping, but about asking, who am I really trying to save? When we stop using others as screens for our projections, we discover that caring for oneself is not selfishness. It is the only solid foundation for any genuine love. The empathy that heals is the one that flows from a whole heart, not from a void disguised as generosity. Romantic relationships and fear of vulnerability. Love should be a safe harbor, but for those who carry old scars, it can feel like a battlefield. Have you ever found yourself building invisible walls even when your heart longed for connection? This paradox is the trademark of someone who loves with one foot out the door, giving themselves, but never completely. The emotional armor that once protected now prevents true touch. Past traumas don't disappear. They infiltrate relationships like silent shadows. A simple delay turns into abandonment. A trivial argument becomes catastrophic rejection. It's not a lack of love. It's the internal alarm system firing false alerts, confusing the present with the past. The fear is not of the current partner, but of the emotional ghosts they unintentionally awaken. Healing begins when we recognize these patterns as echoes of already lived stories. It's not about ignoring the past, but about differentiating it from the now. The true act of courage isn't loving without fear, but allowing oneself to be seen even while afraid. When we stop projecting our old pains onto new loves, we discover that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the only language true love understands. The strength born from pain. There's a kind of resilience only those who have broken know, the one formed in the gaps between falling and getting back up. It's not the strength of motivational speeches, but the one that arises when there's no option but to keep going. This silent resilience intertwines with pain, becoming part of the fabric of the soul. Have you ever been surprised by your ability to bear burdens you once thought impossible? That's proof that darkness also teaches us how to see in the dark, but beware. The same strength that sustains can also harden. Turning into armor is easy. The real challenge is balancing resilience and flexibility. When we allow pain to make us strong without making us rigid, we discover a peculiar wisdom, that vulnerability and strength are not opposites, but companions on the journey. Healing doesn't lie in forgetting battles, but in learning to rest between them. Excessive rationalization. Thinking to avoid feeling. The mind can become an impenetrable fortress when emotions threaten to overflow. Have you ever analyzed a situation so much that it lost all meaning? Dissected every word, every gesture, until nothing remained but a rational void? This over-analysis is often a clever trick of the ego, turning feelings into logical puzzles to avoid diving into what truly hurts. But life is not a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be lived. When we prioritize explanation over experience, we create a barrier between ourselves and our true emotional nature. The antidote is not to abandon thinking, but to invite it to walk alongside feeling. Only when we allow reason and emotion to dance together do we find the balance between understanding and truly experiencing our humanity. The archetype of the wounded healer. There is a sacred irony in those who heal others while carrying their own unhealed wounds. Have you ever felt compulsively drawn to ease others' pain as if it were your personal mission? This noble impulse often hides a deeper truth. We are trying to heal in strangers the parts of ourselves that still bleed in silence. The wounded healer is the one who turns their pain into balm for others, but forgets to apply the remedy to their own cracks. True mastery arises when this archetype finds balance. It's not about stopping caring, but about including oneself in one's own compassion. When the healer learns to direct some of that loving energy inward, the wound ceases to be a shameful secret and becomes the source of their most authentic wisdom. Complete healing happens when we help others not from lack, but from overflow, when our own cup is full enough to share without emptying ourselves. Low expectations as self-protection. The soul that has been disappointed often learns to live off crumbs. Have you ever found yourself sabotaging your own desires before even expressing them? This silent strategy of wanting less to suffer less is not a lack of ambition. It's a defense mechanism as effective as it is painful. When life repeatedly teaches us that expecting is dangerous, our psyche creates a new normal, settling for the minimum to avoid the blow of disappointment. But this pact with emotional mediocrity comes at a cost. By reducing our expectations to zero, we are not protecting ourselves from pain. We are depriving ourselves of the possibility of joy. The true balance lies in cultivating conscious hope, allowing ourselves to desire without demanding guarantees. Courage does not lie in the absence of fear, but in the ability to open our hands to receive, even knowing they may return empty. When we free ourselves from the tyranny of what if it goes wrong, we rediscover that vulnerability is the fair price for a full life. The weight of unprocessed past. Some pains don't stay behind. They settle into our present like unwanted visitors, coloring every experience with shades of old wounds. Have you noticed how certain situations trigger reactions that seem disproportionate? As if something inside you were reacting not to what is happening, but to every time something similar has hurt before? The unprocessed past acts like an emotional ghost, repeating patterns we swore we had overcome. But there is a way to transform this weight into wisdom. When we stop running from these painful memories and face them with compassion, they lose their power to control us. It's not about erasing what was lived, but about reframing it, allowing these experiences to become part of our story without defining our future. True freedom begins when we understand that the past only holds the power we still grant it. Conclusion. The healing journey. Healing was never about erasing scars, but about learning to touch them without pain. Every defense mechanism we've explored, from the persona to the complex, from rationalization to distrust, began as an act of self-love, an attempt by the soul to survive the unbearable. But what if you could honor these strategies without needing them anymore? Recognize that the protection that once saved your life now limits your ability to live it fully. This is not a journey about turning a page, but about realizing you are the author of the whole book. When we stop fighting our wounds and start listening to their stories, something magical happens. The past ceases to be a prison and becomes the solid ground on which we build our freedom. True transformation begins the moment we accept that pain didn't break us. It made us profoundly human, capable of seeing beauty even in the marks we carry.